In this video, I'm going to do an entire scientific breakdown on how to optimize your metabolism for 5 times as much fat loss and how men over the age of 40 are getting six-pack shredded by utilizing metabolic priming. So in the video, we're going to break down exactly how your metabolism works and how you can actually optimize it to get 5 times as much fat loss. And then we're going to actually go through a case study with one of my clients that actually breaks this down step by step so you can really start to understand how well this strategy works and understand the key concepts that really move the needle the most when it comes to your metabolism. So if you guys don't know me by now, my name's Adam. I'm an online fat loss professional and I specialize in metabolic science and metabolic priming. And I've helped over 400 plus men in just the last 6 months alone get absolutely stupid shredded like they were in their 20s by optimizing their metabolism at a very high level. And so these are just some of the clients that have went through our program in just the last 6 months alone, all around the age of 40 to 50 years old. And as you can tell, a lot of them are absolutely shredded at the age of 50. And so we're going to actually break it down because it's going to make a lot more sense when I start to really break down the key concepts of how your metabolism works and how optimizing it can help not only you eat more food, but also get leaner and stay leaner for longer. So let's get into right today's video because I got a lot of topics I do want to cover today for you guys. But really, this is how your metabolism works. It's broken down into 4 really big quadrants, right? And like the biggest quadrant being your basal metabolic rate, right? So this is where primarily we focus with our clients is optimizing the basal metabolic rate. And what the basal metabolic rate is breathing, blood flow, sleeping, organ function, keeping you upright, keeping you alive, right? And so there is a direct correlation between essential body functions and carbohydrates, right? So the mechanisms that we use within our clients is utilizing a higher carbohydrate diet and optimizing the body for something called carbohydrate metabolism. So what carbohydrate metabolism is utilizing the body and optimizing the body to primarily use carbohydrates as fuel. So we start to run into trouble, and when a lot of guys start to run into trouble is when we start to run into more of like what's called metabolic gridlock, where the body doesn't know what type of energy or source to actually optimize for. So let's take into context like a high-fat, high-carb diet when we both have high fats and high carbs. The body doesn't really understand where to actually optimize the energy pathways, right? So the first thing we have to understand about the metabolism is that we can optimize it by optimizing energy pathways. So metabolic gridlock, also known as mitochondrial metabolic gridlock, refers to a state where the body's mitochondria responsible for energy production become inefficient at switching between burning from different fuel sources. This leads to a buildup of metabolic byproducts and the disruption of the body's ability to respond to fluctuating energy demands. So what we want is a healthy metabolism with metabolic flexibility. So healthy metabolism involves the ability to switch efficiently between using glucose and fat for energy based upon the body's needs. So metabolic gridlock can arise from factors like overconsumption of calories, obviously, particularly from processed food, lack of physical activity, and disruption to the body's natural diurnal rhythms. So in a lot of cases where we see a lot of guys go wrong is one, they have a higher fat, higher carb diet. Obviously, that means obviously they're low protein and maybe they're just over consuming on calories in general. So what we can actually start to optimize the body and get the most amount of your metabolism when we start to optimize it for carbohydrates. Why? It's because carbohydrates actually correlate to essential body functions, right? There's actually direct correlation between the basal metabolic rate and carbohydrates. It's the body's main fuel source. So keep in mind, the body's default fuel source is carbohydrates. It prefers to burn carbohydrates. But let's think about this logically. Why is that? Well, first of all, the body prefers carbohydrates because it's the most ready available fuel source. It's stored intramuscularly. It's burned very quickly. It's digested very quickly. So as opposed to fats, when you're in like more of a keto diet or like a low carb diet, carbohydrates are more ready available. So they're going to be more likely to want to be burned first. So it's the body's main fuel source. It gets broken into glucose for energy and extra stored in the liver. So yes, if you overeat on carbohydrates, you will gain weight. But if you eat the correct amount of carbohydrates, there's a synergistic effect that happens with overall body composition that is really beautiful, right? And it really does come down even to like the reduction of cortisol levels is correlated to carbohydrates. The reduction of inflammation, the improvement of just overall satiety, right, within leptin. And so if you've been in a low-carb diet and you've been really at the point where you're craving sugar, for instance, a lot of that comes down to like lower levels of leptin because when you start to crave sugar, your body's craving carbohydrates. So the low-carb diets and the keto diet lifestyles, in a lot of cases when you start to get very hungry and start to crave certain items of sweets, a lot of it is that just lack of carbohydrates in your system. So we can solve that by having a higher carbohydrate, lower fat diet, right? And so when we go into a lower fat diet, we don't want to completely eliminate fats because fats are good for hormones, but we want the correct amount to maintain hormones hormones, but not enough to where we're causing metabolic gridlock. So really, the leptin, the satiety hormone, is correlated to carbohydrates, makes up 60% of your metabolism, and is the body's preferred fuel source. Also, there's a correlated response to overall cortisol levels with just in the brain, right? And understanding that, like, carbohydrates are going to lead to better levels of sleep, better levels of just overall relaxation. So there's a substance in the body, and there's a state in the body called the parasympathetic state. So the parasympathetic state in the body is a state of healing, right? It's a state of releasing good hormones within the brain for satiety, for overall feel good. And we're going to get into a lot more depth about that, but what we understand is there's a lot of good concepts within carbohydrates that are good for the bodies and they're good for the body's natural diurnal rhythms. But it's also really good for just parasympathetic state, putting the body in a state of healing, and then even like for sleep as well. And so there's a lot of great aspects when it does come to carbohydrates, but where people go wrong with increasing carbohydrates, they don't have the correct fat amount, so the body gets put into a metabolic gridlock. So another really great aspect of why we utilize carbohydrates and why carbohydrate metabolism, when you're utilizing optimizing metabolism, is better than a keto diet or a high fat diet, is that the amount of carbohydrates in your diet is directly linked to your levels of T3, a hormone which is correlated to active thyroid hormone, right? So T4 gets transferred into T3. T3 is the active thyroid hormone. High carb diets associated with higher T3 levels, while lower carb diets associated with lower T3 levels. So the amount of carbohydrates you eat is a direct key factor in regulating T3 production. So even in the scientific study they did on the effect of caloric restriction and dietary composition of serum T3 and reverse T3 in men, we conclude that dietary carbohydrate is an important regulatory factor in T3 production in man. In contrast, reverse T3, which is the opposite of T3, is not significantly affected by changes in dietary carbohydrates. So they've done multiple studies, surprisingly, on the decrease in thyroid hormone and low-carb diets. So in order to function properly and maintain appropriate metabolism, our body produces an important hormone called T3. It's the most active thyroid hormone and is incredibly important for glucose management and proper metabolic function. Low T3 levels can lead to a condition called sick syndrome, in which body is constantly cold and sluggish. And if you've ever been like a very low carb diet where you just feel like extremely like slow and hands get cold, this is kind of what happens, right? So when calories and carbs are too low, your T3 levels drop. So we understand that the biggest part of your metabolism, when we start to understand it, does really start to optimize with carbohydrates. We think about thyroid hormones. We think about leptin levels. We think about satiety. We think about parasympathetic state and putting the body in a state of healing and cortisol reduction. And for a lot of guys that I do work with, and we work with a lot of high-level individuals and high-level jobs where, cortisol is just is part of the job, right? Stress is part of the job. And so those carbohydrates really help to levels of serotonin in the brain, like the happiness hormone, that is going to therefore put your body in a parasympathetic state of healing and allow you to sleep better, allow you to feel better, XYZ. But when you get into the other parts of the actual metabolism and how it really works, we have the thermic effect of food, right? So that makes up 10 to 15% of how you burn calories per day just at rest, right? And so the thermic effect of food is the energy it takes to break down food, digestion, and calorie conversion. So when we take into concept the actual thermic effect of each macromolecule, we find that 35% of that protein has a 35% thermic effect, which means that for every 100 calories that you eat, 35% of that gets broken down in the calorie conversion digestion process. Carbs, on the other hand, have a 10% thermic effect, and then fats have a 3%. So optimizing the body for carbohydrates in a carbohydrate metabolism state, having a higher carb, lower fat diet, we have a 3 times as much thermic effect of food, which we can target the thermic effect of food within this area, having a higher carb diet. And then getting into the last two, which is probably the most interesting concept that's probably going to surprise you, is that this is your exercise activity, right? So typically when you pull this up, this will be kind of grouped into one, but really the exercise activity comes into 2 separate quadrants. One being non-exercise activity thermogenesis, like non-planned exercise, like walking around, moving, fidgeting, the things that you do psychologically without thinking. And then you have your exercise activity, like you're working out in your cardio. So this is where most guys focus. This is where most guys go wrong, is they're overdoing all of this and they're trying to overcompensate for this 5 to 10%, not putting into context how your metabolism actually works at a higher level. level. So how we start to optimize this within our clients' programs is that one, we add steps to the program, right? The steps are going to add for good levels of non-energy activity thermogenesis. But when we start to optimize the body for carbohydrates, there is an actual synergistic effect that happens with overall NEAT, right? So carbohydrates can indirectly affect NEAT, non-energy activity thermogenesis, by influencing energy levels. As the body primarily uses carbohydrates as fuel, when you consume sufficient carbs, you have more ready available energy to perform everyday activities, potentially leading to a higher level of NEAT through increased movement and fidgeting through the day. So carbs are the body's primary source of energy, meaning adequate carb intake can support higher levels and increase in NEAT. So what this means more logically in more simple terms is that when you have more energy, you psychologically move more without planning it, right? So like when you have higher levels of energy, you're more likely to fidget, you're more likely to walk around, you're more likely to get up off the couch. When you're exhausted and just absolutely beat at the end of the day, you are less likely to move around psychologically. So there's a correlation between higher levels of NEAT and carbohydrates, because carbohydrates give you that extra edge, that extra bit of energy to move when you're not even thinking about it, right? And the interesting thing when it does come to non-activity thermogenesis is they've done studies on this, on the calories you actually burn with NEAT. And the guys who have fidgeting problems, the guys who shake their leg, type on the keyboard, like jog their leg at work, whatever it may be, burn up to 500 to 800 calories a day through non-activity energy activity thermogenesis. To put this into context, you burn about 200 to 300 calories through the day, like at your workout, right? During your workout session, you burn maybe 200 to 300 calories. Optimizing NEAT, you can burn up to 500 to 800 without even thinking about it. And I put this to the test one day on myself. I sit here at the desk for 8 to 12 hours doing client work every single day, filming videos, putting new content out. I've tracked it one day. I burn about 500 calories sitting right here doing what I'm doing. I'm speaking, I'm moving my hands, I'm typing on the keyboard. I burn 500 calories a day by just sitting here doing nothing, right? Think about how much more logical that is rather than trying to overdo the cardio you're eating and trying to undereat on the food you're eating, right? So it's the problem with the metabolism, what people don't understand is that with our clients, the reason why we see 5 times as much fat loss and the reason why you see clients like this who are 47 years old and absolutely stupid shredded, or clients that are down almost 200 pounds with abs, is because we focus on 95% of the metabolism, right? We focus on the highest leverage parts of the metabolism, and we don't really focus too much on this, because if we optimize these, we can have 5 times as much fat loss without even trying, or like dying over cardio sessions, spending hours on the treadmill, right? So really getting into this to context, now that we understand how this works, how do we put this all into concepts that actually make sense with clients, right? So I pulled up a client, and so there's 3 parts of our program, 2 parts of our program, and when clients are with us for a couple of years, there's obviously a 3rd part, but really when we don't understand is like the metabolic priming phase and the fat loss phase, right? So the first thing I want you to understand about the metabolic priming phase is that the metabolic priming phase is designed to optimize BMR, right? So when I'm about to show you here with our client Nate, he started at 2,000 calories. And obviously, like most guys, 95% of men sitting here watching right now, your BMR is under optimized. I can promise you. After doing this for as long as I have, working with over 400 different clients in different job titles, different job positions, I can promise you that 95% of men who come to this are under optimized in their BMR. And so when we start to look at this in a concept, when we can optimize the BMR, is it comes to overall tissue, right? Muscle tissue and cortisol levels. So our goal with the metabolic priming phase is to slowly get our clients upwards in calories without having to induce any cardio. In a lot of cases, clients come to us about 30 minutes of cardio, we'll cut it to 0. Why? Because we want your metabolism to do the heavy lifting. We want your metabolism to do more of the lifting than you going out and starving and doing more cardio. So our goal is to get food up. And how do we do that? Is that we actually push this up, right? We push calories up ever so slightly and try to optimize BMR. So the reason we start cardio at 0 is this simple reason, right? Over time, the body adapts to cardio, leading to a decrease in calorie burn for the same level of exertion. This is due to metabolic adaptations where the body becomes more efficient at using energy. So metabolic adaptations within cardio means that like you do 30 minutes of cardio, By week 2, 3, you're no longer burning the same amount of calories because your body has adapted that amount of calories. Your cardiovascular system has improved. You've gotten better and more efficient at doing it. It got easier. That's why we start our cardio at 0 so we can work up and we can have less metabolic adaptation within your overall, workout plan and also your cardio. It's going to make a lot more sense when we get into the actual fat loss phase. But our goal is to get these calories up as high as possible without gaining any weight, right? And how we do this correctly, which I'm about to show you, is one, there's certain key concepts that we do want to focus on. Biggest one is we want to focus on tissue, right? So as we're raising food ever so slightly, we're focusing on growing new lean muscle tissue. Why? It's because muscle tissue is 4 times as metabolic than body fat, right? So when it comes to muscle tissue, it takes 8 calories to sustain just 1 pound of muscle tissue. It takes 2 calories to sustain just 1 pound of body fat. So keep that into context. It takes almost 4 times as much calories to maintain muscle tissue. So when it comes to body composition in general, there is a difference between weight loss and fat loss. And this is where a lot of guys go wrong. Their aim is overall weight loss, right? And when they start to lose weight, they start to lose muscle tissue with it, which makes them even less metabolic, which is the reason a lot of times they do gain the weight back. But maintaining muscle tissue and focusing on fat loss, we can maintain body composition, but we can also maintain a higher level of metabolism. So when it comes to body composition, this is extremely important to know, is that 15% body fat at 150 versus 15% body fat at 180 is completely different look, right? So as we're doing the metabolic priming phase, as we're optimizing the BMR, as we're gaining new muscle tissue, we are also creating a foundation of muscle tissue, which makes you look and appear leaner, right? Take bodybuilders in their off season, for example. They have pretty good abs. Why is that? Is because they have the muscle tissue that protrudes to the amount that makes them look and appear leaner, right? So having more muscle tissue allows you to be leaner at a higher body fat percentage, which is in turn just more sustainable in the off season to have a lean physique year round. And so when it comes to overall cortisol in the metabolic priming phase, our goal is to reduce levels of cortisol. So when we start to optimize the body for carbohydrate metabolism, according to research from randomized controlled trials, carbohydrates can potentially reduce stress by influence the body's cortisol levels, with studies showing that increasing carbohydrate can lead to decrease in salivary cortisol, a marker of stress. When compared to lower carbohydrate diet, this is thought to be due to the role carbohydrates play in maintaining stable blood sugar levels, which can mitigate the stress response. So cortisol reduction. And then the potential mechanism behind this stress-reducing effect is thought related to the role carbohydrates in serotonin production, a neurotransmitter associated with feelings of well-being and calmness, like we had talked about, the parasympathetic state. Carbohydrates are related to the parasympathetic state because it puts your body in a state of healing, increase serotonin, and just overall positive effects of neurotransmitter inside your brain. So that's going to reduce cortisol levels significantly, right? So as we're doing this, we are raising food, we are optimizing the body's BMR, and we're trying to get the calories up, right? But let's think of this in the opposite context. This is a little question that I get a lot. A lot of guys, who come to us at 2,000 calories, because almost probably 95% of the guys that come to us are under eating because they think that less food means leaner physique, and that's not true. Let's think about this in the opposite context. Let's say somebody comes at 2,000 calories and they're like, yeah, I want to get lean, I want to lose body fat. What most programs will do, what most uneducated programs will do is, okay, cool, we'll put you in a calorie deficit, 1,800. Oh yeah, do a little bit of cardio, 20 minutes. No, we're going to lower that a little bit after we hit a plateau. But what we're doing is we're working against the BMR. We've hit a level of cortisol within the BMR that is quite literally restricting fat loss. Because if you have raised levels of cortisol in your body, it won't let you lose fat, right? It'll restrict you from losing body fat with raised levels of inflammation and cortisol. So how do we do that properly? We reduce the cortisol with carbohydrates, we optimize the BMR, we lower the cardio to make sure that we're reducing cortisol. In a lot of cases, guys that come to us in this certain position, like our client Wayne that I showed you up here, Wayne came from a previous coach that had him at 1,900 calories on the left. 1,900 calories on the left right here. He was a high-performance athlete. He's a bike rider. He bikes about 100 miles per week. On the right, he's eating 2,700 calories, 350 grams of carbohydrates, down 10 pounds, right? Eating more food because we simply reduced cortisol, right? Because all the stress response that his body had undergone through the program that he was currently in had put his body in a state of constant stress. So if we're trying to lower food when cortisol levels are already, shot, we're basically putting the body into even a worse position. For one, rapid weight regain, leptin levels of decrease, serotonin decrease, more inflammation, less energy. So we have to work up. We have to put your body in a state where we're optimizing the BMR. So this is how this looks in a context from a metabolic priming state from our overall clients, right? So this is Nate, came to us at 2,000 calories. He's been low carb for 10 years. So notice how his side shot. He's just majorly inflamed. He doesn't really have any body composition impact. And the biggest moving factor for Nate right here is that we had to first optimize his calories, his macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats. Because what people don't understand about metabolic priming is it does come down to the protein, carbs, and fats, and strategic changes each week based upon the check-ins that you're actually checking in with. So he came to us at 235. 235. And I want you to see what happens in just the first 2 weeks when, one, we get the correct protein, carbs, and fats, and we start raising carbohydrates to reduce cortisol levels, right? So already he starts at 2,000 calories, 2,200, and we're going to run through this really quick because I want to show you exactly how this works. But watch his body composition start to change after we add 50 grams of carbohydrates right here, right? So the next week he checks in, check this out, right? This is up 400 calories. 400 calories from right here. All of it just carbohydrates. Just putting his body in a parasympathetic state, reducing cortisol levels, and leaning him out, eating more food. And we do the same thing each week as he checks in, right? And you can see, you can slow this down if you want to on this video, but as we start to increase this, we got him all the way up to 2,900 calories. So keep it in context. This is him at 2,900 calories. 2,900 calories. But look at this. This is what's even more incredible is that he's down 10 pounds, eating 900, almost 1,000 more calories and leaner, eating more food. 10 pounds down, 900 calories more per day. But now we've put his body in a position to where he can get even leaner because we're starting at a higher amount. So what we do, we actually start a correlated cut, right? So we started him off a minus 10 grams of carbohydrates, a minus 10 grams of protein, and we started his cut. And so we're going to get into the fat loss phase and understand the old goal with the fat loss phase as well. So now that Nate's at 3,000 calories, has an optimized VMR, and has 10 minutes and been doing no cardio, we've metabolically adapted now to 3,000 calories in 0 minutes of cardio. So keep in mind, he's doing steps. Steps in my mind don't really count as cardio. It's more of non-energy activity thermogenesis. But look how much more room we have to work with rather than what we had before, right? So now we have all of this cardio we can put in if we hit a plateau, and we have all this food we can drop from if we hit a plateau, right? And so we don't want to just throw this all out the window off the bat and try to get his calories all the way down here and try to spike cardio up here, because that's when the body will start to fight back and start to induce more levels of cortisol. And we don't want that. And so what we do is each week we do the same thing. It's we'll lower the food a little bit. We'll check in on him the next week. The next week, if he hits a plateau, then we'll raise the cardio a little bit, because now the cardio now has a newfound stimulus. So if we were doing 20 minutes of cardio in the metabolic priming phase and we started the fat loss phase, he now has a metabolically adapted to 20 minutes. So the first thing we'd have to do, start him at 30, right? So that's the reason why we start at 0, so we can optimize the BMR first and have the BMR do most of the heavy lifting. And then we have all of this that we can work with, right? We have so much more utensils in our tool belt to get him lean. And so as he checks in, we're going to go through the fat loss phase. He got back from a 2-week vacation, and I think this is really interesting to learn, because a lot of guys, when they go on vacation, they'll gain 10, 15 pounds. He was eating 2,900 calories before he went on vacation. He actually lost weight when he went on vacation. So he came back 3 pounds down. So when he came back, we did the exact same thing that we did when we first started, but we did the opposite, right? We lowered the food next week, and as you can see, just within the first couple weeks, he starts to lean out and get like crazy lean, okay? So he's at 2,700 calories right here. And the same thing goes. It's like we started to scale cardio and we started to lower food each week. So the importance of understanding metabolic priming, it is a very customized approach that takes the guidance each week to know what to change. And obviously we handle all of that, like hands off with our clients. We just tell them what to eat, how much cardio to do. They check in and we just make the changes, which is, why clients come to us, is because we've done this so many times. It's a repeatable process. We use a scientific mechanism that is repeatable and very customized based upon how he's checking in. So like when he checks in, the things that we look at is like body composition, yes, weight, yes, overall fatigue levels, overall energy levels, overall hunger levels, and all of those things correlate to hormones in the body. So we know that what is happening. So let's say that he has level 9 hunger and level 2 energy. Okay, we're hitting a lactate threshold. We need to pull back and gain some carbohydrates, get a refeed. And so obviously, like I said, we take care of all of that. Our clients don't need to understand how to do that because we make it so hands-off for our clients, as easy as just following a GPS. But anyways, like the two ways we can scale cardio is we can scale cardio time per session and sessions per week, right? So as you can see, we started like 4 times a week with Nate, 35 minutes, 4 times weekly. We can scale time per session and sessions per week. This is how we can break fat loss plateaus, by adding more days or more time per session. We don't want to add 5 days, 6 days right off the bat, because then we're throwing all the resources that we've accrued over time out the window, and your body's going to metabolically adapt faster. So what we do is we simply just change stuff when it is needed, right? So we aim for about 0.5 to 1.5 pounds of fat loss per week. This makes it sustainable. 2, makes it where we can maintain leptin levels and satiety levels, maintain ghrelin levels, which is the hunger hormone, and it put us in a position where we don't get too hungry and we don't get too fatigued and we feel good, right? So doing it this way, because like if you were to go from 2,900 to 2,200, you would feel it within the first 2 weeks. And I'm guessing some of you have tried that before, when you've tried cutting your calories to 1,800 and you may be able to do it for 2 weeks, but then that second week you were just absolutely shot. So we don't want to do that. We want to nurture the body. We want to understand the body is an organism that's 10 times as smart as me or you will ever be. And so we have to treat it as such. And so that's what we do. Each week as he checks in, we check on cortisol levels, we check on strength, make sure my strength's not decreasing, because if we decrease in strength, we're decreasing in overall metabolic presence. And we make sure it's energy, hunger, leptin, all the hormones are right in play, and so we can maintain this. And as we start to go, you can start to see him really, really start to lean out as we start to get lower in calories, right? And so this is where he came to us right here at, we did get a little bit lower in calories with him, but like look at his side shot right here, right? Look at his front shot. He's 48 years old. 48 years old and absolutely freaking shredded, man. And like we got him to 207 right here. So this is, like I said, eating more carbohydrates to start, but like putting our body in a spot where we can get leaner, right? Because if you don't have the correct outline down, then you're going to be pushed against that lactate threshold and pushing to that cortisol threshold, and your body's going to push back. That's the reason guys who've been on the low-carb dieting lifestyle for 5 to 10 years have been kind of stuck in this same position. And so getting into like where we got with him is that we did give him one really, really good push when we got pretty low in calories, right? And we can see on his weight that he like spiked down and he spiked up a little bit. So this is usually typical when we start to hit the lactate threshold, is that we'll hit a low, we'll push even heavier, and then we'll see a nice spike in weight, right? This isn't a bad thing. This is a hormonal response that we understand that we've hit the lactate threshold. So what did we do? Is we actually pulled back, right? We pulled back calories and added food once again. And so what we did next is we actually did another metabolic priming phase to heal his hormones, heal his metabolism, but also make sure that this is sustainable, right? This is where everybody goes wrong. This is why 95% of people gain the weight back, is because they don't understand how to nurture their metabolism after they lose the body fat. Because when you're at 1,600 calories, you are very, very sensitive to food. And if you overeat, you will gain weight rapidly, because with metabolic adaptations occurring, your metabolism down regulates when you're low in food. And if you start to overeat significantly amount of calories, you gain the weight back really quickly. So this is the most important part when it does come to the program, right? And so what we did with him is we start, like, obviously he's low in calories. We started him off at 1,900, and we just did the opposite. So we can already see that since we are hitting the lactate weight threshold that our BMR is pretty shot. So what we needed to do is we needed to slowly lower the cardio and slowly raise the food and slowly get the BMR back to health. And I'm going to show you what this looks like in the concept, because I took this last night, because he woke up this last week like looking so goddamn good. And I wanted to show you guys this. And so like this is where he was at 207, right? And so what did we do, right? And I took these photos and I want to show you guys as we start to bring him back out of this deep cut. And so we did the same thing. It's like we watched his body, we changed his body composition based upon the key factors that are outlying and where his hormones lie. And we start to lower the cardio, we start to raise the food. And then I want you to see where we got him, is that we got him to 2850 calories. Keep in mind, he got to 2900 when he started, but look at his body composition now. He's still lean. He's still shredded, right? But yes, he did gain about, 8 pounds, but like the thing is that he's also gaining lean muscle tissue. Look at how deep his lat insertions are, how wide his shoulders are, how much bigger his arms are getting. Because when the benefit of where this kind of like revamp of the metabolic priming phase and putting your body back into hormonal health is that you are also the most metabolic when you're the lowest in calories. Why do bodybuilders, for instance, after their shows go crazy in the gym? Because you are the most sensitive to food intake. So when you start to increase training, increase food simultaneously, you can grow lean muscle tissue extremely quick. So I want to put these two side by sides together at the end of the first metabolic priming phase and the end of the second metabolic priming phase, right? So these are the two differences right here. Check this out. This is the same amount of calories, right? Actually a little bit less, but a little bit around the same. These are the same amount of calories in both these photos. Exact same amount of calories. Now what happens? Now we can go into another fat loss phase. But now this is his starting point right here. His starting point's much leaner, much tighter, much bigger. And so we can go into another fat loss phase and we can get him even leaner starting where he's at. And this is why we have clients who come to us and they are looking the way that they do. It's because when you understand how metabolism works, you understand what direction to take, you understand the GPS of nurturing the metabolism and the hormonal health that underlies with men 40, 50, 60 years old, you can make data-driven decisions. And some of the clients that have been with us for over 3 to 4 years, this is the reason why we see 100 pounds, 35 pounds, 100 pounds, 100-pound transformations is because this process is not only repeatable, but it's also predictable, right? So imagine what Nate's going to look like when we get him back down in food and start like another fat loss phase, right? And then what happens after the fat loss phase? We go into another metabolic priming phase and put his body into health. This is where sustainability comes from, guys. This is how you get a sustainable year-long physique because okay, let's take him into context. Nate's obviously, he's a business owner, right? He runs his own healthcare clinic. But let's keep in context. He's like, hey, like I just want to maintain this physique. I look good. I feel good. You think he can maintain this physique being shredded, eating 2,900 calories per day? Absolutely, right? 2,900 calories a day is a good amount. You're not hungry on 2,900 calories. This is why this is sustainable. It's because when you understand how to nurture the metabolism back to where you can eat more food but stay this lean like Nate right here, it's way more sustainable. But not only that, when we put in the context of a carbohydrate metabolism, the overlying aspects that actually play with actual health, we have clients that come to us that we fix their blood sugar levels. We fix their cholesterol levels. We're quite literally getting men off of doctor prescription drugs that have been just prescribed by doctors, right? Let's take, for instance, our client, Michael, 53 years old. He came to us eating 1,900 calories and with an A1C of 11. He's down to 7.6 A1C at 53 years old, eating 1,000 more calories. Because when you optimize the body for carbohydrates, you can improve blood glucose levels, but you can also improve insulin sensitivity as well. We have another client. His name's Keith. He came to us and he was on doctor prescription medication, and we were able to get him off every single doctor prescribed medication he was on with his current doctor. He went into the doctor's office and the doctor's like, hey, you need to refill your cholesterol medicine? He goes, no, I stopped taking it. And he was like, what about your blood sugar medicine? He's like, no, I stopped taking it. He said, Your blood sugar levels and your cholesterol levels have been the best that they have in years. What have you been doing? He's like, I just been following a plan that I found with this guy named Adam Bundle online. He specializes in metabolic metabolism manipulation. And the doctor was absolutely just dumbfounded. But like, let's keep in the context, guys. Is like doctors' jobs are to prescribe medication, not to understand metabolic health. Their job is to write the scripts. What we do is completely different. We optimize hormonal health, metabolic health to put your body in a state of much healthier and much leaner physiques. We have guys that come to us, we get off medication. We have guys come to us that are 50 years old who just simply want to get stupid shredded. And that's exactly what we do. But like, to understand Nate's full transformation, understand the totality of like the impact that it's even made on Nate's life, I want to very quickly before the end of this video, play a quick transformation video and a testimony video from Nate.
Adam, I mean, I trust you as far as I can throw you, and right now it's probably pretty far. So, changed my life, man. For the last 20 years, nobody ever thought a carb was a good thing until I met Adam. And it's like, carbs are life, man. This is how we do it. Like, groundbreaking information for me. Some of my buddies are like, dude, there's no way you have abs. And I'll pull my shirt up and they're just like, holy shit, dude. Like, what? When you're fit and you're in shape and you command a room, I mean, it's really something. It's something else. It's cool. Yeah. It's not your work. It's not your family. It's not your finances. The only person that's standing in your way is you. And you just got to get out of your own way.
So obviously seeing Nate's transformation, getting to walk through it step by step, and now getting able to hear from him yourself, you understand the impact that we're doing here. And you understand that like what we're doing is not a gimmick. This is like a science-backed method that's worked 400 plus times. We have a 99% client success rate. We were top 4 in 2024 on the app Trainerize out of 400,000 different online programs. And so our client success rate's there, our reputation is there, and at the end of the day, for us, client success comes number one. So I hope you liked today's video, and I hope like this kind of opens your eye to how the metabolism works, how carbohydrate metabolism is really changing the industry of fitness right now after coming out of a 10-year spout of, you know, the keto, low-carb dieting lifestyle, and that this is just a much more sustainable approach, much more healthy approach, and just long-term, a lot more longevity-wise, health sustainable. So if you like these type of videos, like, comment, and subscribe. My whole entire channel is designed for the purpose of education and teaching you, the viewers, how to reach that next level physique. So if you like this type of video, like, comment, subscribe. Do videos Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Turn my bell notifications on, and I'll see you guys next video.